Good afternoon, Giuseppe. Good afternoon, everybody.
We are going to talk about the DBdeployer, the way we use it, the way we like it, and some things that we'll think on the spot. My name is Giuseppe Maxia, the data charmer. I work as a software explorer at VMWare, even though I don't work with databases there. I have several decades of development and database experience, and also a long time I have been a MySQL community member.
Thank you, Giuseppe. And me, so I am Frédéric Descamps, known as lefred. I am MySQL evangelist working in Oracle in the MySQL community team. And I'm using MySQL for a long time too, so since 3.20. And I'm living in Belgium, and as you can see, I'm a devout believer also. So thank you, Giuseppe.
So first of all, just a few words of presentation. What is DBdeployer? DBdeployer is a tool that deploys multiple database servers in a single host. And this multiple database servers are isolated, sort of. They are called sandboxes. They are not virtual machines, but they are separated from the rest in such a way that they don't disturb each other. And this is how you can deploy more than one. A few quick facts about the DBdeployer. Is a command line tool, and it has no dependencies, meaning that you don't need to install libraries and, you know, like you would do with Python or Perl. It's just a single binary per operating system, and the interface is similar to Git or Docker. So if you know this kind of command line, you will be familiar with DBdeployer as well. You can install, or better say, deploy single database or database in replication, group replication, and more. There is an integrated help. It is easy to extend, and you can find it in GitHub with all the documentation. The main features: isolated sandboxes. So using different directories, different ports, different sockets, you can have several database servers that will work side by side, but will not interfere with each other. It could be a single sandbox, meaning that there is a sandbox containing one database. Replication sandbox with one primary, several replicas. Group replication that could be multi-primary or single primary. MySQL cluster, NDB, Percona extra DB cluster, and then most important, there are customized scripts for each sandbox. So you can do all these things manually to install these things in your computer, but then you will have a lot of options to type on the command line. DBdeployer instead creates some scripts that will make easy for you to handle the databases. So why do we use DBdeployer? I can tell you my personal story, but first I would like my friend Fred to tell his story.
So thank you. So why do I use DBdeployer? For me, it's quite easy. I use it to test MySQL. So as you know, sometimes people are just telling me, oh, in this version, I have an issue, or in this version, I cannot do this or that. And so I use it to test it. To deploy machines on my own machine, and I test. And sometimes I also use it to test upgrades, to test replication between different versions. And finally, I'm using it also to test the next version. The version that will come, I also use DBdeployer to test it. And so every time I do some kind of demo or stuff like that, I'm using DBdeployer to deploy a bunch of version I want to test. That's my main way to use DBdeployer.
Yes, my reason is more or less the same. Mainly it's used for testing, and not only for testing MySQL, but also for testing algorithms, or for testing differences in versioning, or for testing the possibilities of replication topologies that you can quickly create with DBdeployer. As for people that I have heard about, I know that several projects use DBdeployer for automated testing. So they create a bunch of databases using DBdeployer, and then they run their software to see if it works.
Yeah, so the main topic here, it's testing, right?
Testing, yes. The main use case is that, and not only that, but DBdeployer has been designed on purpose to be easy for this task, and I would say that it's not recommended to use it for production, because this is not what it has been designed for. Especially in the matter of security, DBdeployer doesn't care much, almost nothing. But you can do a lot of things that are not testing. For example, I used DBdeployer to create a stream of data from MySQL that was not using row replication, to convert the stream into row replication and pass to a program that was wanted to replicate to a different database system. So this is not testing. This was more or less production, but it was behind the scenes. So DBdeployer has many purposes, even though the main one is always testing.
Yeah, it's good to warn the users that
yes.
it's for testing, and production limited, right? Really, if
yes.
you know what you're doing, because yeah, security it's important too.
So this is mostly what you need to know so far. Now we abandon the slides and go to the command line and have a look at what we can do. I have here 3 environments. My main one, a Mac OS, where I usually run DBdeployer, a Linux operating system where I also used to run DBdeployer, and then I have a new one that is a Docker container, which I use just because I wanted something clean, so without anything inside. There is no MySQL, no DBdeployer, nothing. So I'm going to show what you can do to put DBdeployer here and start operations. So we are here, it's a Ubuntu system. If I try to run MySQL,
can you make it full screen?
I can make it full screen.
And maybe a bit bigger the font.
I can do that as well. So MySQL, not found. DBdeployer, not found. So I have here get dbdeployer.sh. where I use a command that you will find in the documentation of DBdeployer in GitHub. The command is this one, using curl, and you just fetch this installation script, and it will run in your local machine and install DBdeployer. There is also a shortcut. Instead of that long URL, you can use this one, bit.ly DBdeployer, that will do the trick. So let's run this. And it has installed the latest DBdeployer, that is 159.0. And it has copied that DBdeployer into one directory that is in the path. So if I run DBdeployer now, it works. However, I have nothing here. I have just a DBdeployer binary, but there is no MySQL. There is nothing that DBdeployer can use to start. So there is a command that is init that initializes the DBdeployer environment. Let's run it and then explain what it has done. You see that it has created a directory opt.mysql and a directory Sandboxes, and then it's fetching MySQL 8022, that is the latest one that was in the list of DBdeployer internal download. So in addition to that, it has also prepared the DBdeployer for command line completion. So we can run this command, and now DBdeployer, I press tab and it completes the command. Some boxes there are nothing, but if I say versions, you see that there is a 8022 available. Now 8022 is not the latest one, and why I got 8022, because if I run the list, you see that the latest one that was in the list, it is 8022. So I can say DBdeployer downloads get by version 80, guess latest, and let's see what happens. And it's downloading MySQL 8023. This is because I have 8022 as my latest one. Once I put MySQL 8023 in the list, then also it will find 8024 if it's available. So now I have MySQL 8023 here, and I can say DBdeployer unpack MySQL 8023, and here we have it. Now, if I say DBdeployer versions, you see that I have available two versions, 8022 and 8023. Now, before doing something with this, I just want to spend a moment to show what we can do when we have a different version. I go to my regular Linux machine. Let's make it bigger. DBdeployer version, and I have 158.2. You remember that when I fetched the DBdeployer, I had 159.0. So this is not current. There is a command, update verbose, and it goes to GitHub, finds the latest release, and then installs that release and replaces the command, the binary that I have used to run update. So now if I run minus version, it says 159.0. So with this, we can go back to our Docker container where we have DBdeployer, 2 database binaries, and it's time to start doing something.
Can I ask you a question, Giuseppe?
You can ask at any moment, because this is the purpose of this talk.
So now you said it guessed 8023 because your list of DBdeployer was not updated and 8022 was the latest one, right?
Yes.
But now, I really want to install 8024. Do we have the way to do it manually?
Manually, you need to DBdeployer downloads. You have a command add. So you can add the tarball to the list, and then you can download it. Of course, to add it, you need to have the tarball. So it's not exactly easy, but you can now, if you know that the list of tarballs was updated in GitHub, you can say downloads import, and you can say remote GitHub, and then it will fetch the list and then use that list for downloading. Of course, when I created this, I was hoping that somebody, for example, you, would contribute a list, an update list of downloads, so I don't have to do it myself, because, you know, I like to create automated tools, but I don't like to do things manually. So I'm waiting for help on this. Okay. Otherwise, sooner or later, I will update the list.
But so, also if somebody, I don't know, a developer or something is doing their own version of MySQL, and they have the source or, you know, the binary on the tarball on their machine, they can use it also to install it, right?
Yes, I mean, you can put it, for example, I have the list and I say download show where was the latest one? Okay, let's take this one, just doesn't matter. You see, it tells you the name, the version, the flavor, that could be MySQL, Percona, and so on, the operating system for which works, the URL where to fetch it, and then the checksum. Well, when you do DBdeployer download add, the checksum is calculated automatically for you, so you can have it. Once you have your dedicated list, you can just use the list locally, and it will contain your binaries. You distribute this to your co-workers, and then they can fetch it just like any other tarball. I mean, as long as there is a URL and the version that is compatible with the rest of the list, everything should work fine.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, back to our versions. Versions means we have these two things that we can install. DBdeployer deploy single 80, and it deploys 8023. So if I don't say a specific version, it deploys the latest one. But if I say the full version, it will deploy that specific one that I have said. And you see, both now are running. And you see that the host is the same, but the port are different. We have 8022 for one server and 8023 for another one. By default, DBdeployer takes the version number without dots and converts it to the main port. Then you see that there is also a 18,022 and 18,023. This is the MySQL X protocol port. And they also use a different data directory. So if we go in Sandboxes, you see there are two directories. Let's see what is inside. And there are a lot of things, but the important thing is that there is a directory data. And inside data, this is the data directory with all the files that don't clash with the other one, because the other one is A023 data. So they are independent and they do their own, they work in parallel. I said before that you don't need to remember the port and the socket and so on to run this database. You just run this use, that is a script that was customized for this sandbox. So you say use
with $.
And here you have MySQL 023, and you can do everything because this is the MySQL client taken from the distribution of 8023. So you know that it's compatible with this, because if you are installing something like MySQL 5.6, then you don't want to use this MySQL client with MySQL 8, because then you will have errors. And if you run the other one, you see you have MySQL 8022, so you are into different databases. Now,
so this was to install one instance, right?
It was to install a two single instances. Now, for each of those, we can run replication. So DBdeployer deploy replication 80, and in replication we have the possibility of install them concurrently. So replication, you need to install at least 3 nodes, 1 primary and 2 replicas, and you can run without concurrent, but it will take time. Instead, if you run concurrent, then they will be deployed at the same time. So the time that is needed to deploy one node will be the total time for the replication. And it has deployed the nodes, initialized the nodes, and then we have a replication. Now, is that true? Let's see. Replication sandbox, and here we have several scripts. You see, we have check slaves, initialize slaves, that is the thing that was running here to create the replication. Check slaves, it tells you what the master is doing and what every replica is doing. Notice that I use the old syntax because I want this to be compatible for MySQL from 3.23 onward. So for the moment, this is what we are doing. Then you can run the master. And here you have the first node that has master in the prompt, or the first slave, but we want to try something even better. So you can say test sandbox, and then you will test every sandbox, every node, to see if in isolation they are working. It's running something very simple. It checks that it has the version that it's supposed to have, that the port is what is expected, that it can run select and some read-write operations. But you can also test replication. And when we test replication, we insert some data in the primary, and then we get that data in the replicas. And the end, you see we have 10 tests, and 10 tests have passed. So we have found all the data that we put inside. And if you have several databases, several sandboxes, you can also test them all at once. DBdeployer global test, for example. It will go to all the sandboxes that have been deployed and check that they are okay. Any questions so far?
No, but just not a question, an highlight. You see that it's made for testing, right? You have tests everywhere.
Well, yes, but you know, the first thing that you have to test is that this thing that you want to use for testing is working fine. Yeah. Once you are sure that it's working fine, then you can use it for better testing. That is not testing itself, but is testing something that is important for you.
But usually when I do testing, Giuseppe, the first thing I also do, it's, and you know some of them because you are using them and hosting them. I use some data, right? Some generic data that I like to test. Can DBdeployer help me with that?
Yes, it's something that was asked recently, and I added the capability of putting some well-known databases. So DBdeployer data load, and you have several possibilities: export, get, import, list. Let's say list. And you have several data repository. There is the world database, you know, the oldest one that is very simple. The menagerie database is also an old one that was developed by Paul Dubois for his MySQL books long time ago. There is the Sakila database, also well known, and the World X, that is MySQL ready for the X protocol. And there is the employees database, which is a bit bigger than the rest of the databases, and it is used when you want to have some, let's say, some more data going around in your database. So show. And
can you add more by yourself as a user?
You can.
I was thinking of Ostain, right? Because he always run TPCH stuff. So if he wants to load his own data, how can he do that?
Okay, so I said you can. Actually, you cannot right now, but you can put a pull request adding the database that you want to add. It's quite simple, actually. So you need to provide this information. For example, for Sakila, you have the name of the database, the description, the URL where we get the data, the file name, the size, and the internal directory. What is the internal directory? It's the directory that is inside this repository. And then the loading commands. Here I run use from SakilaDB, Sakila schema SQL, and then use from SakilaDB, Sakila data SQL. You see, these are the instructions that you use to load the database. So now if we say get Sakila, you also need to say where we want to run, 8023. So it's downloading the Sakila database and then unpacking and running the commands that you have seen here that are in this load.db.sh that was created on the spot. And you see cd the name of the sandbox and run the commands that I have indicated. And now if we say sandbox 23 use Sakila, show tables, and Sakila is here.
Perfect.
The same happens for the rest of the databases. The employees database takes a lot longer, but this is how it works.
Yeah, that's cool. And I see a lot of, let's say, I am a MySQL shell user and evangelist, and I will check how I can use the very powerful MySQL shell dump and load, because I use DBdeployer to test it also.
Yes.
And so I could check it, how to integrate these commands directly in DBdeployer. And then I do a pull request, of course.
Now, if you have a MySQL shell in your system, this is easy. Unfortunately, MySQL doesn't pack MySQL shell with the MySQL tarball. So let's see what we can do. Deployer downloads list. So you see we have a MySQL shell 8022, and what we can do with this, we can say deploy do we need anything? We download this MySQL shell. Now we have the tarball for the MySQL shell, and we need to install somewhere. So DBdeployer unpack MySQL shell, and here we say that is a shell. And it should find the corresponding version, and you see it has copied the MySQL shell into MySQL 8022 because it's the corresponding version. So now the 8022 has also the MySQL shell. In this case, yes, it doesn't have it because it was not present when it was installed. So we need to reinstall it. deploy single 8022 force. So it will remove it and install it again. Now it should find the shell, and I run MySQL shell and it works.
Woohoo, it works.
It works, yes, it usually does.
That's great.
So, what's next? We want to see something better or more powerful than replication and single. So let's go to my my regular machine that is a bit more powerful. And DBdeployer versions.
If you can make it a bit bigger so you can read.
Yes. So MySQL versions, as you see, I have a lot here. So I start from MySQL 5091 until MySQL 8023. What we want to do here, and DBdeployer, deploy replication, topology equals group 80 concurrent. If we don't say anything, this will work in multi-primary. Now it has deployed all the nodes. Now it runs initialize nodes. You can hear probably the fan of my computer complaining because it's running a lot of things. And here is the replication. You see, you have, they're all primary. So this is in multi-primary. And we can run the same thing with single primary. And we will run another cluster that is separated from the first because it will have a separate data directory, separate ports, separate sockets, everything. So they can work in isolation from one another. Even more fan action, but is run. And you see here you have a primary, secondary, secondary, primary, secondary, secondary, and so on.
And very fast.
Relatively fast, yes. I have some places where this is much slower than that. But these kind of operations are the operations that are run in my regular test. Before I release anything, I run something like 10,000 tests that go inside some Docker containers, both in my machine and on GitHub. So I know that I should not have broken anything when I release a new version.
I have now a different question.
Yes.
So let's say somebody deploys a single instance, 8022. He loads his data, his test data in it to make his, I don't know, whatever one test he wants to run. And then he says, oh, 8023 is there. I want to upgrade it. Usually, DBdeployer was made to create a new instance, a new sandbox for 8023, right?
Yes.
This is the default case. But does it have the possibility to upgrade the existing one?
No. The way that upgrade works for DBdeployer is by upgrading from one sandbox to another. let me explain. DBdeployer admin, and there is the...
If you can make it a bit bigger also, the screen. Thank you.
So upgrade -H. How does it work? You can upgrade from 8011 to 8012, but you need both sandboxes to do the upgrade. So let's try. Remove the ones that we have and deploy 8022 single. And 8023. Now we can run upgrade. .022 is not available yet.
You really want it?
I do. Dry run. Dry run shows what it's going to do. So first stops both sandboxes. Then it moves the data directory from 8023 to a temporary place and moves the data directory from the old one to the new one. So basically we are now, everything is in the new sandbox. Then in the new sandbox we run start -- upgrade equals false. Let's see how it works. Stop the first one, stop the second one, move the data directory, and then runs the upgrade. Which means that the data that was in A022 is moved up to A023, and now you can work with the newest directory. Of course, since we didn't do anything, this upgrade is meaningless because it was empty before and it's going to be empty now. But I can show you something interesting that you can try at home. So let's go back to our beloved Docker instance. And DBdeployer cookbook list. This is too big for the screen. So you have a list of recipes, and this you can read on your own. And the thing that I want to show you, there is a recipe upgrade, where it shows a complete upgrade from 5.5 to 8.0. And we can say cookbook make all. So it will create all these scripts. So this is a very good example of how to do scripting with DBdeployer, how to do testing. Recipes upgrade. And here you have the upgrade DB that shows basically what it is doing from version 5.5 until version 8.0. Actually, I made a mistake. Why I came to the Docker container where I don't have all these versions, but here I do. So DBdeployer cookbook make all. And now we can actually run it. Recipes upgrade. Now it's deploying 5.5 and 5.6. It's writing something in a table in 5.5 and then upgrading to 5.6. So you will see this data also in 5.6. After that is upgrading from 5.6 to 5.7, writing something on that table again, and going on from 5.7 to 8.0. So this table in the end will have data that it was written in all versions. And you see that in the end the table was preserved after the upgrade, and you have data from 5 versions. Here you are, 6.
That's cool.
So this is important because this cookbook shows you how to do things like replicating from a single server to a group replication server, or from a group replication server to a single server, from 2 MySQL clusters, so the replication between clusters, and things like that. This is, you can see how to clone, to use the clone command, how to use the admin port when you deploy a sandbox, and a lot of other interesting things.
That's very cool. So my next question for you, Giuseppe, if we have still a bit of time, do you have any plan to, or is it already possible to deploy using the cloud?
Frankly, not. The use case of DBdeployer is the opposite of the cloud. So it's something that you use to work in your laptop, or especially, you know, I used to travel a lot, mostly before the pandemic. And when I travel a lot, I have a long-lasting battery and no connection, or little connection. So in those cases, I just wanted to be able to do my usual work without need to have the cloud. Now, connection is much more available now than it was 10 years ago, but still, the use case of DBdeployer is to contain the deployment in a single place, just because you want to test without too much of dependencies. In the future, this might change, and I'm open to suggestion, to contributions to make it more valuable. But basically, the main use case of DBdeployer is just with its feet on the ground.
No, it makes sense. Just wanted to know. And I think my last question was, do you have plan to make DBdeployer, because you are a command line guru, we can see that, but do you have plans to make it more interactive, you know, like more, I will not say like click everywhere like a GUI, but why not? Or something like, you know, using this kind of end curses stuff to make it, you know, like, or menus to, oh, this is what I've deployed, you go to this one, or delete this one, stuff like that.
Not specifically, but I made the DBdeployer in such a way that it can be used for interactive operations. Not by me, because I usually don't do that, but I understand that there are other people who may like it. So let me show you DBdeployer, there is a tree command in DBdeployer docs that show the commands that we have. If you count them, you see that there are more than 60 commands here. And so all these commands need to be activated. And the way that you activate now is just by writing those commands on the command line. However, every one of these commands can be represented into a JSON file, and you can use this JSON file to do something that you please. Let me show you. DBdeployer export so this is a JSON file that shows all the commands with all the help provided for the commands. So you can take this JSON file and create your own graphical application or web-based application that will interact with DBdeployer using those commands that are provided. So you just need to use this in the way that is it makes sense to you. I made a prototype that shows that this is doable, meaning that I can take these commands and when I add the commands, the system changes, and then you can run commands interactively. Personally, I find that using the command line, I'm much faster than any graphical interface, so I haven't added anything. However, this is an invitation to collaboration from the community. If somebody feels strongly about interactivity, I'm open to contribute, to collaborate so that DBdeployer can be used for interactivity.
So before we finish, the main idea and the focus, it's on testing, right? We can see it as this, and this is how I use it. This is how people in support are using it. It's testing, testing, testing. But there is, so I asked you about testing and you said to me, okay, this is how you can load data. But there is one other thing I'm using a lot for testing, and it is Sysbench, right?
Yes.
And I saw in some release, in commits from DBdeployer, something related to that. Could you tell us more about it?
Yes. So Sysbench is a popular way of testing.
Thank you, Alexei Kopitov.
Sandboxes. And I recently added several scripts to use Sysbench automatically. So if you have Sysbench in your system, you can use the Sysbench script that will run Sysbench with what you want. So here you have just a skeleton of Sysbench. The thing that we do is just connecting Sysbench with DBdeployer. So it uses the right username and password, the socket, and the database, and then you can pass here all the commands that you need. Now, if you are a Sysbench guru, this is what you want to use because it allows you to be the most flexible. But if you want to do something quickly, there is also another Sysbench. That is the thing that I use most. So if I run Sysbench ready, it tells you that you can either run with prepare or with run. So if we want to have a look, it is a compiled command where you run preparation for a sysbench that has, let's say, a reasonable amount of data for 60 minutes, and you just run it, and it will mostly do for a basic test. It doesn't require much knowledge of sysbench to run. Of course, it requires some resources.
I see. 10 threads for 10 minutes.
So now here is creating this, and it will just run quickly to create the environment. And then if I run you have the regular sysbench running in your system, and it will stop after 1 hour unless you stop it before.
Perfect. Yeah, cool.
So you can either put your own commands in the sysbench script, or modify the sysbench ready to have the parameters that you need. Okay, so I think we can move back to the slides, and perhaps you have any more questions?
Yeah, not me. So no, if we still have time, people will ask questions and we will answer them during the show, right?
Yes. Even though I think there was an interesting question that we have discussed previously. It's whether DBdeployer has changed the course of MySQL development.
Yes, that was something I wanted to ask you, and then I forgot. Yes, because I know the answer, right?
Well, sort of. I mean, it doesn't have changed, but it has influenced somehow. For example, I complained a lot about the installation of MySQL being too chatty, and finally in MySQL 5.7 and 8, the chattiness of the installation was reduced and made more manageable. And especially I asked for a long time to have a minimal tarball, and MySQL delivered almost 2 years ago. So I'm very happy, not only for that, but it has influenced others to do the same. And recently also Percona has released a minimal tarball, which makes me happy and makes the operations with DBdeployer much.
That's true. Thank you for annoying me a lot or nagging me a lot to ask to improvements. No worries.
Likewise, your feature requests and questions have helped me to understand better the needs of other people and to improve the system. So thanks a lot for being with me, lefred, and thanks to everybody who has listened.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.